some shocking incompetence in military planning and war-making machinery. But the loss of Norway did not affect Britain directly. Its importance to this book, and why a little background is given here, is that it brought on a debate that ended with the ousting of Neville Chamberlain as Prime Minister. Another important exclusion is the Battle of the Atlantic. It was underway in 1940 and 1941, and Britain was starting to feel the pressure of the cargoes and ships lost to submarines. But the battle had not entered the deadly phase of 1942-3. It is dealt with to the extent necessary in the chapter on Britain and the United States, with which the book concludes, because it did affect relations between the two states in our period. The subjects dealt with here are only those that threatened to end Britain's role in the war, one way or another. These are numerous enough. I start with a depiction of the Chamberlain government, which, by the lacklustre way it waged war, was in itself a danger to Britain. Then I proceed through the political crises of May 1940, the replacement of Chamberlain with Churchill, and the attack on Churchill's policy by Lord Halifax, and, on occasion, Chamberlain. The next crisis concerns the fate of the British Expeditionary Force, BEF. Would it manage the only manoeuvre left to it, a retreat, and would it return to Britain? Then follows the threat of a Nazi invasion and the Battle of Britain, which are in many ways, but not all, interrelated. Finally, the ordeal of the Blitz is investigated to examine how close British morale came to collapse, and whether the Germans were making serious inroads into Britain's war-making capacity. There are also two large issues regarding Britain's ally, France, and his putative ally, the United States, to be dealt with. Did Britain, despite Dunkirk, make every effort to aid France in the campaign of May-June 1940, or was it merely concerned with its own defence? And how was it that Churchill's pleas for America to enter the war fell on deaf ears? In the course of these chapters, the question of whether Britain did fight this period of the Second World War alone will be addressed. In shaping the book in this fashion, I also seek to draw attention to two other issues. The first is the nature of the war had Britain been defeated or withdrawn into a sullen peace with Hitler. Without delving too far into speculation or counterfactual history, I find it difficult to imagine what might have happened. Would Hitler have defeated Russia without Britain to contend with? Would an American reconquest of Europe from the Nazis have occurred without an offshore base? Fortunately, it is not necessary to answer these questions to see how important it was that Britain continued the fight against Hitler. By taking this approach, I also want to highlight the nature of the struggle in 1940. Britain was a class-ridden society with many imperfections. It was also a liberal democracy that stood for the rule of law, representative institutions, tolerance, or decency, to use George Orwell's word. And Britain was all that stood between Hitler and, at the very least, the domination of Europe. On the other side, the Nazis had stamped out the rule of law in Germany, based their policy on racial hatred, wiped out minority dissent, and excluded altogether groups such as Jews, Romani, communists, and homosexuals from civil society. The war in the West is not usually portrayed in such black-and-white terms. It is not that historians have identified any aspects of Nazi Germany that are laudable. It is more that in 1940, the full horror of Nazi policies had not yet revealed itself. The war in the West is not usually portrayed in such black-and-white terms. It is not that historians have identified any aspects of Nazi Germany that are laudable. It is more that in 1940, the full horror of Nazi policies had not yet revealed itself. But the snuffing out of Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and most of France, was atrocious enough. And the persecution